Hey everyone, welcome back to another Kubernetes tutorial. In today's video, we are going to learn how to create pod in Kubernetes in two different ways. First using the kubectl run command and then using YAML file. I will also explain some important basic you need to know, especially if you are getting started with Kubernetes. So let's get started. We have covered what is pod in our previous video. However, let's quickly recap. In Kubernetes, a pod is the smallest and simplest deployable unit. A pod typically contains one container, but you can run multiple if necessary. Think of a pod like a wrapper around your application container, providing it with its own networking and storage. As you can see on my screen, I have started Minikube and the Minikube status is running. Let's start by creating a simple pod using kubectl run command. We will launch an nginx web server container. Run command kubectl run nginx-pod and you can define the image. Like this you can run the nginx container. Let's break down this command. Kubectl run command to run a new pod. nginx-pod, this will be the name of the pod. -- image equals to nginx. We are using an official nginx container image. If you don't specify a version, Kubernetes pulls the latest image from a Docker hub by default. Since we are using Minikube, remember that by default, Minikube set up a single node Kubernetes cluster, so this pod will be scheduled directly on the Minikube node. Once you run that, let's check if the pod is up and running. Run kubectl get pods. You should see nginx-pod with status running. This one. Now let's delete the pod to keep our environment clean. I will run kubectl delete pod and followed by the pod name. You can confirm it's deleted by running kubectl get pod again. This is deleted now. Now let's create the pod the proper way using YAML file. YAML lets you define your resource as a code, which is much better for real world projects. Advantage of YAML: can reusable, easy to edit, good for automation and version control. Before we write the YAML file, here are the few important things about YAML. YAML rules for a beginner. Spaces are important. Use spaces, not tabs. Spacing matters. Usually 2 spaces per level. Keys and values are separated by a colon. List start with a dash. YAML is case sensitive. Always use correct lowercase field. Names like kind, not a kind. If you are using kind, you need to use a small case, not a capital K. Here are some common beginner mistakes: mixing the tab with space, missing the colon after keys, wrong spacing, typos in field names. Let's create a file called nginx-pod.yaml. Press enter and you can mention API version. I will mention v1. Kind pod. And what else we required? Metadata and specification we need to add here. Metadata. Provide the name. I will give nginx-pod. Next is spec colon. Enter. Containers. Enter. Here I will give name nginx-container and provide the image. If you want, you can provide the version as well. As of now, I am giving this much of data here. Save and exit. Quickly break down this file so that it will be easy for you to understand. API version v1, API version for the pod resource, and kind:pod. This tells the Kubernetes we are creating a pod, and metadata like a pod name, and next specification of a pod such as container, and lastly container, list of container inside the pod. It's a good practice to validate your YAML before applying it. We can validate the command using dry run. kubectl apply -dry run client-f, and you need to provide the file name nginx-pod.yaml. Unable to decode nginx-yaml, JSON cannot unmarshal. Okay, here we need to provide space. Let me correct that. Let's rerun the dry run command once again. If the file is good, you will see the message saying that pod is created. Now let's create the pod. I will use the same command, just I will remove dry run command and run once again. Now you can see pod is created. First I did the dry run to validate the YAML file, and then I actually created the pod. So remember, always check YAML formatting carefully. Use a dry run to validate before applying it. And if you face any error, check the missing spaces after colons, wrong indication and typos. Now let's verify again the pod is running or not by using kubectl get pods. Here you can see the pod is running. If you want to see more details, you can run with kubectl describe pod nginx-pod. This is the pod name, and press enter. This will show you all the details of the pod. The pod name, the namespace is default because while running we have not mentioned the namespace, and this is a Minikube node. When you scroll down, it will show all the container details and also the mounts. And that's it for this tutorial. We have learned 2 ways to create a pod using a quick kubectl run command and the proper way with YAML file. YAML might look a little tricky at first, but once you practice a little, it becomes easy. If you found this video helpful, please like, subscribe and leave a comment if you want me to cover more Kubernetes basic. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next tutorial.